Hey guys, Raf here from the Endgame Investor with this month's edition of the Bitter Endgame Draft featuring Phil Lowe. And if you haven't seen Phil's latest interview at Liberty and Finance, it was fantastic. It was probably the best interview I've heard him do on that show or ever. Everything was really clearly laid out, and I'm proud to have influenced Phil to take upon himself this sort of public job that he's taken on. Check it out. I saw it on Rumble. It's probably also on YouTube, but definitely worth listening to. He's very clear. So good job, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafi.
What are we going to We have three topics for today.
Yes.
Some of them are going to be heavy. We're going to be going into things that we don't normally talk about, but we talk about their cause. But I wanted to get out of the ether and out of economics and into the real world because we're seeing it now. We're seeing um, hard evidence, hard events that the inflation is heading to its climax. I don't think we're there yet, but we're definitely we've picked up, we've shifted up a gear. Gold is going faster, silver is going faster, mining stocks are going faster, and violence is getting more obvious. Um, we're going to talk about the Charlie Kirk assassination, not specifically the Charlie Kirk assassination, but there's the volume of deranged people on the planet is getting higher and higher. And I wanted to start with this that hold on, I'm not looking at the camera because I'm looking at all these links. So anyway, um, I was listening to a shir, a class from one of my rabbis that I listen to every now and then when he gives a class, and we were talking about the war in Israel, and he was asking if one of the guys he was podcasting with in this class was asking, the Jews in Israel that are saying that the IDF is purposely killing civilians, why are they doing that? Are they deranged? So he answered like, well, think about it this way. I'll answer your question with a question. Were the Nazis evil or were they deranged? And the answer is it doesn't make a difference. Evil is a certain derangement of the mind. That if you believe something is like patently false and it happens to aggress against other people's right to life, then I guess that's an evil derangement. And even if you believe it sincerely, it doesn't mean that you're not evil. So, the saying in the Talmud is like lemay nafka meaning. What's the difference? There's a lot of deranged people in America. Some of them believe that it's good to shoot people who are openly debating college students on campus. This is a derangement. There are deranged people that believe that boys are girls and girls are boys. And there are deranged doctors and deranged policymakers and deranged politicians. It's all over the place. So the question is, oh, well, they're not evil, they're just deranged. So then the answer would be, how do you stop the derangement? Is you stop the cause of the derangement, which is the inflation that is deranging the system. And you would hope that, like, yeah, it's true that many of the Nazis after World War II, after it was over, they kind of like everything kind of like cleared in their heads, and a lot of them escaped unjustly. They escaped justice. Okay, that happens. But whatever crimes they did, I'm pretty sure that most of the derangement that they were experiencing as a Nazi soldier or as an SS officer or whatever, that kind of evaporated. And they're like, what the hell was I doing? What the hell was I thinking? And whether they deserved punishment or not, the derangement ended. So I think that's what's going to happen once the currency collapses. The derangement's going to end. We can worry about what to do about justice later, but so the first thing we want to talk about is how inflation deranges people, how it turns them evil. Some less so, some more so. So Phil, what are your initial thoughts? And we're going to go from Charlie Kirk, and then we're going to
Yeah,
go to the medical industry. And I have some clips lined up for you that I want you to comment on.
sure. So Charlie Kirk was assassinated almost immediately after I finished my interview with Dunnigan. I was already fairly psychologically heavy because that woman who got knifed the day before, a couple days before,
Mm.
and I just finished with Dunnigan, and then my Twitter blew up, and it was just video, you scroll down, it's just video of Charlie Kirk's neck exploding over and over again. And it was absolutely horrendous. And Charlie Kirk, I mean, he was in the peripheries of the things I watch. Sometimes he'd pop up. Maybe I think he interviewed Dave Smith once or something like that, or Dave Smith interviewed him. he would just pop up, and he was the most like milk toast, let's all get along and we're just going to debate our ideas. And the video, sometimes the videos would pop up of some screeching leftists like screaming at him, and he's like, "Well, I disagree with you, ma'am. I just don't think that's right," and just,
Yeah.
um, and he just to be murdered in front of your family like that is, and in front of everybody is just awful. But it is. I mean, we've talked about this before. Violence is a function of inflation because in addition to the people that are becoming deranged by the inflation itself, there are a lot of people who are just like there's the group of people, there's like the blue collar workers who they just want to live their life and play by the rules and save their money and get ahead, and they're being totally screwed over. And so they're furious. And then there's the socialists who are sitting on the system, and the system, as the inflation gets worse, their gravy train ends, right? So you have all these people that are, they're on disability, they're on disability for their obesity.
Hyperobesity. If you weigh more than 300 pounds, you qualify as disabled.
And they have some special medical thing because they declared themselves transgender, so they're getting $1,800 a month, and they can afford to like live in their mom's basement and eat ramen, but they don't have to do a damn thing, right? They can just sit there and TikTok all day, and they don't have to work, and that
Those are
gravy train's
all
in.
combinations of behavior that will derange your mind.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
will not be living in
Absolutely.
reality if you live that way, and you'll have all these crazy ideas, and some of them might involve hurting people, some of them might not. And what we
Yeah.
would call evil are the ones who gravitate towards violence in a natural state, because some people just do that. Maybe they want to be avengers or whatever, and they're motivated by good, and then they get deranged by these ideas, and they end up being evil people. Nobody who's evil, who commits violence against others, thinks that they're trying to hurt the world.
Yeah. So excuse me, these people are as the inflation gets worse and worse, like their gravy train's over, and so they are getting upset too, and so they're lashing out as well. And I just wanted to get like a gauge of like what can we expect is, what are we going to be looking at here? How many assassinations? How much violence? So I asked AI about how many politicians were assassinated from 1920 in Germany, in Weimar Germany,
Yeah.
from like 1920 to 1928. It was 376 were violently assassinated. And
Okay.
how many, Rafi, of that, how many were assassinated in 1922, 1923?
300?
350.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay.
So
So,
during that peak is during that the peak, that's when everyone, it's just gonna be awful. It's just gonna be awful. And then what's worse is before it would be like you read in the newspaper, oh, Charlie Kirk was gunned down. Oh, that's terrible. You feel so bad for the guy. And then, or even on TV, the news reporter comes on in solemn voice, Charlie Kirk has been assassinated today. But you just feel it's bad. But now it's like in 4K high def. You can
mhm.
slow down and see the bullet entering the neck and the blood gushing. And the same thing with the girl on the subway. This is going to be the first time where everything's in like 4K high def and just mass. The masses are going to consume this information. And I'm not against it. I think the filtration disguises how horrible it is. When it
Mhm.
goes through the newspaper and it goes through the concerned news anchor, with that deep baritone,
Yeah.
monotone voice of fake corporate concern. And it turns out all these people are like raging leftists.
Mhm.
So they're putting on this mask of the impartial journalist. I think it's probably good to see everything raw, just so we can see how awful it all is.
Yeah, let's not fool ourselves into thinking, oh, well, graphic violence will make everything worse. I mean, the world has been at war. The period from post World War II to, I don't know, let's say to the Ukraine war, or whatever arbitrary point you want to make. I mean, the world has been at peace, but that's been an aberration. We're going back into war. Most of the period of human history is people fighting and killing each other. And how many people were killed in World War II? How many people saw raw, disgusting violence right in front of their faces that was so horrifying that they have to steel themselves psychologically to just even continue? This is common. People see disgusting violence for generations all the time, or they live in squalor and they see horrible pain. That's just the nature of most of our lives as a human race. So I mean, maybe we have gotten a little bit too delicate because of the illusion of wealth that we've been living in since the end of World War II, when America was a unity power and it was in charge of everything. So it was able to calm everyone down just by force. But the entire World War II generation, outside of just Americans, but Europe, they saw death everywhere. I mean, it was common. They just dealt with it. So maybe we'll get used to seeing death again, and then it will stop. And once it does, we'll be able to compare. I mean, this is not going, it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be
No.
easy. But the worse it gets, the closer we are to the end. Just as you cited from Weimar, most of the assassinations happened from 1922 to 1923. Most of the
Yeah.
violence is going to come as the end game crescendos.
Yeah. But I mean, if history is a guide, people, I mean, Charlie Kirk, is just the first of what are going to be many, unfortunately. Please don't, if anyone's listening that's thinking about it, I don't know
Yeah.
what else to say about that. I was, I was walking. It's not just politicians. Now, I do want to stress there was no mass casualty in Weimar. The chaos does not cause mass population collapses
Mhm.
because the market can still clear. What causes mass population collapses is communism and
Yeah.
socialism.
Yeah.
So as long as we do, if you're just a normal person living a normal life, you're probably as long as we don't go communist, you're probably going to be okay. If you go communist, if we go communist, if Zoran Mamdani becomes, the next president, then I have no, all bets are off. All
Yeah.
bets are off. But
So a parallel to that would be, um, what causes mass casualties is not necessarily the COVID event, but it is our communist response to it that killed most of the people. It's
yeah,
going to be
yeah,
that way in the end game. And no, I don't think it's possible for a communist dictatorship to develop from this endgame, because a communist dictatorship has to develop using price signals from an existing market, like the USSR was able to develop using an American price array and its currency being a dollar derivative, because America gave it a bunch of dollars in order to survive for 70 years in which it slaughtered its own people. And the same thing in China. It used a price array that didn't exist in its own country to sort of hobble along and exist for long enough to kill 40 million people. So this time, because the dollar itself is going to collapse, there's going to be no existing price array that a communist government could use to inflate off of in order to continue for more than a few months. I just don't. There's going to be too much chaos
yeah.
and too many power vacuums for. You need a lot of centralized power in order to kill tens of millions of people. Um,
The yeah,
yeah.
excuse me. The woman who died before Charlie Kirk, Irina Zarutska,
Mm.
that's also a symptom of inflation. It's the breakdown of law and order and the breakdown of the state to, institutionalize the criminally
Can you
insane.
trace it?
Yeah. So
Okay.
they shut down the asylums in the 1960s or 70s, right? So they let all these people off into the streets. And now they are, the magistrate judge doesn't even have a law degree. The one who let him out on the street last doesn't have a law degree. She somehow, I don't even know how it works. Somehow she just ended up as a judge, as a magistrate judge. And they brought this, gibbering, drooling guy on his 14th felony.
Hmm.
And she's like, well, he's mentally insane. He's not accountable to his actions. Let him go on his own recognizance. And then he's just sitting on. He has nothing else to
People who
do.
are insane have no recognizance, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like, why let these people out on the street? Because the main reason is they have nowhere to put them. I guess they could put them in the jails and have them terrorize the prisoners serving their other time.
Mhm.
The people that are lucid but just serving time. But for whatever reason, he just ended up on the street. This is a function of collapsing society.
Well,
Um,
let me just add and continue where you left off,
okay.
that I would assume that he has no nuclear family, because blacks are disproportionately, they get welfare payments, which is funded through the inflationary mechanism, which destroys the family, which creates insanity, and then they get on drugs, which are funded by the inflationary system. He's probably on a bunch of drugs. I don't know that for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was on some sort of methamphetamine, whether legal or illegal, in any of the Abilify or whatever they call those Ritalin or those derivatives.
Amphetamines,
Um,
yeah.
who knows? He was probably his family was ripped apart by the welfare system, and then he was put on drugs by the inflated medical system, which we'll go into next. And this is what happened. And we have a whole bunch of meth heads in the country that are deranged, and this is what evil is, whether it's known or not, or they have recognizance or not. This is the effects of evil, and you could blame individuals for it, or you could say they're a product of whatever, but the result is the same. You're gonna end up with dead, innocent people.
But there is at least in America, there's a solution for this, which is to concealed carry. Because if somebody had been carrying, they could have saved her, but nobody was carrying, and this giant guy with a knife is like cleaving her, and so everyone's just like, oh, geez. This has happened before on subways. There was in DC, there was this guy on PCP comes in and grabs some guy's phone, and I guess the guy tries to get it back, and then the guy just they're in this train, everyone's locked in this aluminum tube with this guy, and he just starts stabbing. He stabs this guy completely to death.
Mhm.
So these things do happen. So I recommend you can see. I recommend everyone who can to conceal carry, just for your own protection. I don't, the chance that if you're not a politician that you're going to be a product of violence is probably it's going to be more elevated than it was before. But like I said before, most people do make it through these kind of I'm sorry, hyperinflation events.
Mhm.
The casualties will probably be in the thousands, maybe even maybe tens of thousands. But we are a nation of 350 million people, so the percent chance that any of this will be you personally is actually quite small. Now that said, I was going to yesterday. I went to the farmers market with my son,
Mhm.
and I'm walking to the farmers market, and this guy walks up to me, and I think he's from Africa or the Caribbean or something. He's like, "Excuse me, sir, if you were going to die tomorrow, would you go to heaven or hell?" And I'm concealed carried, so I'm hovering here. I'm like, I'm not talking to you, buddy. He's just a street preacher, but I'm waiting for the knife to come out. That's
Mhm.
just not. I was like, buddy, that's not. You don't walk up to people and say stuff like that, especially in this environment.
Right.
And so I don't know, man. I just kept walking, but keeping a leery eye on him. There are crazies out there, people. So always be on guard. I mean, I carry all the time. I'm actually carrying right now. So you should always carry all the time, and it's for your own safety.
Yeah. Okay. So, look, basically, what I wanted to say about Charlie Kirk was I wasn't a particular fan of him. Not that I didn't dislike him at all, but he's not in any of my circles. Like I know what a card carrying Republican is. I get it. I agree with them on some things, but I'm not a partisan guy. And like so, I'm not going to be rooting for Trump. I know he was like a Trump guy, and there's video of him like crying tears of joy when Trump was elected. I sighed some big sighs of relief that Kamala Harris wasn't elected, but I wasn't particularly happy that it was Trump. I don't care. But he I just I he's more of a symbol of like just general American decency, and he seemed to be just a decent person. And I was telling you before we were recording that as a Jew, I particularly appreciated him because I know he's Christian. I have no problem with Christians at all. But when I hear the name of their God, it makes me very uneasy because of the history we've had with that and being blamed and all this other stuff that led to millions of deaths in my religious group. So I don't like hearing the name. And from all the videos that I've seen of Kirk, of Charlie Kirk, that he talked about God. He didn't talk about his specific flavor of it. He just talked about God because he's trying to connect with people whether they agreed with him religiously or not. And that 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 was very rare. I really appreciate it with him. I never had to like cringe when I heard a certain name. And that made his Republican partisan talks when he went partisan more tolerable for me, and just his general tone of respect for everyone. even when I thought he was wrong, I thought that was very impressive. He was always able to be calm and collected and fearless, even though he should have been full of fear because I don't think he even knew the environment that he was stoking or
Yeah.
that he was involved in, and it just hit him by surprise. But as disgusting as this is, it's going to unleash a violent wave from the other side because look, once you get into this back and forth, these kinds of violent acts, it's going to produce a violent reaction from the other side, whether it's justified or not. I mean, I remember feeling at the height of COVID when my family was under threat and they were saying that I would never be allowed outside again because my family was unvaccinated and that my children would never be allowed to go to school and I'd never be allowed in a public building. I'm like, well, if this actually happens and they take away my life and the life of my kids, like I might get violent because this is severe violence against me. So right now, Charlie Kirk's side is feeling that they are being aggressed against, and they are. And is it and the ideal thing would be like everyone's like takes a deep breath, says, okay, well, both sides realize like things are getting a little bit too hot right now, so we gotta like calm down and talk to each other. But that's not the direction things are gonna go in. It's not.
Do you think
It's
Charlie Kirk was do you think his work was productive? Because in my and I nothing against the guy. I think he was doing, doing the Lord's work as it were, but um because he was basically trying to argue with inflation. Like he was trying to argue with the money press. He's like, "No, the world is sane and the world is rational and you should be sane and rational. Let's debate it." But what he's talking to is, the creatures that are created by inflation. So I'm thinking he might have just been wasting his time and his life because once
no.
this will end once the inflation ends anyway.
No, no, I don't think at all that he was wasting his life.
Okay.
I'll give it I think he was doing a great job because it's not up to people's job, the rank and file human being is not supposed to understand inflation. They're not primarily intellectual creatures. They have a
Mhm.
sense of right and wrong, and Charlie Kirk had that, and he was inspiring young people to at least think rationally on certain things and inspire them positively to be better people, to stop partying and get married, have a family, that this should actually be a goal. And he had to do what he had to do. What like the example I would give is okay, so fine. So Trump is not going to save the dollar. He's not going to stop the end game. However, is he going to save children from being mutilated by gender affirming butchers? He's going to save some of them. Yeah, he is. And some of those
Yeah.
kids are going to grow up and they're going to have genitals. And I'm very excited about that. And
That's going to be cut and used in very, very
yeah.
negatively.
So yeah, yeah, it sounds okay, but
I know what you
so
meant. I know what
yeah,
you mean.
yeah.
You,
Yeah.
they're going to grow up and be able to use those genitals in productive ways in healthy
Yes.
family
Yeah,
formation.
that's very fun. That's very nice. That's very good. So I'm happy about that. And even though Trump is not going to stop the end game, he's going to stop the worst of it. Uh, he's going to make it a little bit less gruesome. So that's good. And I think he's going to get rewarded for that at least. Um, so look, Charlie, who knows what it's going to unleash? I think it's going to unleash a lot of good and a lot of violence. Some of it justified, a lot of it not. I don't know what you'd have to go into a case by case basis, but I'm saying there's the two sides are going to fight each other, and it's not going to stop until the money dies. And once it does, then it's like the equivalent of World War II being over and the Nazis, kind of clearing their heads and saying, "What the hell was that?" And then going back to normal life with all the carnage all around them, already
All
having
right,
been
so
done.
to wrap this segment up real quick,
Yeah.
is it worth it for people to participate in any of that, or does it just make sense just to hunker down and live in your tend to your own garden and get through the end game as best you can?
If you feel you have a talent and a calling that you need to talk to people and tell them how to be sane, like Charlie Kirk did, then do it. If you feel that no one's going to listen to you and you just better take care of your own family and preserve your own capital, do that. Do whatever talent God gave you, just follow it. For some people, it's going to be more dangerous. For some people, it's going to be less dangerous. But we all have to do what we have to. We're all going to die, and at some point, we all have a limited time. And Charlie Kirk accomplished more in his 31 years than most of us will do in several lifetimes if we had that.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Okay. So, Phil, I wanted to challenge you now. I
Okay.
have this video of clips. I wanted to talk about how inflation infects not only politics and causes violence in politics, as you showed us with Weimar, and now we see with Charlie Kirk, but how it affects the medical sphere. So I have this video here that I wanted to share. It's unlisted on my channel. It's not. It'll be part of this video, but I wanted to get your comments on these clips from Aaron Siri versus Jake Scott. So Jake Scott is a pro-vaccine Orthodox doctor. I think he works at Stanford or something like that. And Aaron Siri is a lawyer that stands up for people and their bodily integrity and against vaccine mandates. So we're going to go into it here, um, clip by clip.
Overall, the study found that after 10 years, 17% of the unvaccinated children had a chronic health issue, while 57% of the vaccinated children had at least one chronic health issue, often multiple. That's 17 versus 57%. The only real problem with this study and why it didn't get submitted for publication is that its findings did not fit the belief and the policy that vaccines are safe. Had it found vaccinated children were healthier, it no doubt would have been published immediately. But because it found the opposite, it was shoved in a drawer. We have repeatedly urged Dr. Zervos and Lamoretta to submit the study for publication. They have affirmed the study was well designed and conducted, but Dr. Zervos has said he doesn't want to lose his job. And Dr. Lamoretta has said she does not want to make doctors uncomfortable.
When money pumps into a system, it concentrates capital. We do know that as inflation progresses and the money supply inflates, you have more and more concentrated industries. As the marginal producers get pushed out and economies of scale become more concentrated, you can put this better than I can. As the inflation proceeds, for example, you have there were like, let's say, 1,000 food companies or food producers 50 years ago, and now there's like three or four that control like 90% of the market share. Those kinds of things. It's the same thing with medical. So if you have a group of doctors that control a whole bunch of capital because they're fed inflationary incentives from the Congress, which is the first in party to get all the inflation and then pay it to their powerful partners in whatever industry it might be, then they're going to have a lot of power. And power is going to get concentrated as well as the industry.
Yep. Yeah, you said it perfectly.
Okay. Let's continue to the second clip here.
Mr. Siri, why haven't you held a press conference? Why have you kept this study under wraps?
I appreciate the question. It's never been submitted to a journal, and the hope has always been that it would be submitted to a journal, because I agree with you. It should undergo peer review. It should be submitted to a journal, but they will not submit it because they don't want to get fired. That is what they told me. We've met with the authors many times. These are validly pro-vaccine individuals. They don't want their institution, the journals, their funding sources, their friends, their colleagues, everybody to turn against them, which is exactly what will happen if they even submit this thing.
That is
Here, this is just strengthening the point, but you'll see later in the following clips, Siri says that he went to the authors of this study, and these were pro-vaccine authors, and they found this evidence that not that vaccines don't work, but that vaccinated children are overall less healthy than unvaccinated children. They might get these diseases that they're not vaccinated against more often, but getting the disease is not as bad as having all these other chronic health issues, right? That's the point. And he says, like, I talked to these people, and they said that they can't afford to publish a study because they will be fired. And then later on in the clips, you hear, Jake Scott saying, well, I don't believe that doesn't make any sense. But like, that's what they told him. Like, so you're saying that it's obvious that that's true. So the control, just like if you're going to try to challenge Amazon or Tyson Foods or Apple for market share on whatever product is going to be, Apple, these huge companies are going to destroy you one way
Yeah,
or the other. Like as long as the inflation continues, you have no chance unless you come up with this genius innovation that they can't tackle, which happens sometimes, but
sometimes.
generally
Yeah.
speaking, you're not going to be able to. It's just it's an inflated monster now, and there's no overcoming it.
Yeah, don't even try. I mean, it's like in agriculture, like you can't fight Monsanto. Like if Monsanto crops, if they fertilize and then blow into your farm, you have to pay Monsanto. Like that's the law. Like even if you didn't want Monsanto, you have nothing to do with Monsanto. You planted nature, you planted, heirloom crops of everything. If another farm has Monsanto and those seeds end up in yours, they'll come by and they'll sample your plants and they're like, "Oh, you have to pay us Monsanto. You're using Monsanto DNA, so you have to pay us."
Yeah. So these
And
are
there's just no
these are all
fighting it.
inflation. These are all inflation fattened firms, and
Yes.
with the fattening comes the increase in their power because the more GDP or whatever percentage of the economy they control, the more political power they get,
Yep.
and then now the next thing I want to go, it leads to derangement of these people. How does it lead to derangement? Because they deny basic scientific truths through tortured, crazy reasoning that any reasonable person would say, this is nuts. But they have to go through this derangement because it's the only way they can even try to rescue their their false inflated system that they are a benefit of, either because they are a direct benefit of it or because they're under threat by people that if they expose anything, they will end their careers. So let's
Yeah.
go into the next clip here in the video.
There are 22 studies that claim that vaccines don't cause autism. None of these studies have a completely unvaccinated control group. So unfortunately, if you want to understand what's causing the autism epidemic, these studies are of no use.
Okay, that was that was very short and sweet. Okay. Now, what I wanted to emphasize there is that this guy Toby Rogers, he makes a very simple statement that anyone can understand. You hear these claims that there's 22 studies have been done researching vaccines and autism. So Toby Rogers says none of these studies have a control group of unvaccinated children. That's a very simple statement
Yeah.
and it cannot be denied. You go into each of these 22 studies, you see that the control group also involves vaccinated kids. So how the hell are you going to tell the difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated when you have no control group? This is a basic scientific point, and you'll see that he tries to Jake Scott. He tries to finagle words in a way that don't make any damn sense. So this is the derangement of evil. So is Jake Scott an evil person because he's a doctor and he's vaccinating? Not necessarily, but like he makes this very basic claim that there is no control of an unvaccinated group of children when you're making these studies to try to prove a link with autism. So how the hell can you prove it? How do they even answer that question? I don't know. They're just deranged.
The obfuscation is also the point. The most people are not going to read the medical research papers, so you just see 27 papers have concluded that vaccines don't cause autism, and so that's it. That's the settled science. That's what makes into the newspapers, and there's no more need to discuss it.
Yeah, it's like people saying, "Well, gold isn't money,"
Yeah,
but it
we have
is.
we made a bunch of papers that said gold isn't money anymore. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's continue. This is really
And honestly,
astonishing.
the
Yeah.
real quick before that, like I said, the obfuscation is the point, and I said this on Dunnigan's podcast. If you ask 10 different economists, you get 11 different opinions, right, about the economy, right? And the point is because the Austrians are the ones saying, "Hey, let's go back to a gold standard and shut all this down," but when they're standing up to talk, there's also 10 other people standing up yelling different things. So a normal person who isn't going to doesn't have the ability or the time to go and understand who's who's correct among here. And that's why someone like Milton Friedman was so dangerous because he sounds exactly like an Austrian, but he wasn't.
Hmm.
Anyway, we
Right.
go back to the medical stuff. It's just funny that like the people that sound the closest to what you think would be the truth are the ones leading people the most astray.
Okay. This one is this clip is about it's about 2 minutes long, and then Siri is going to respond to it. But we're gonna stop at the end at where it says Siri's response to Scott.
Chairman Johnson, Ranking Member Blumenthal, and members of the subcommittee, thank you sincerely for the opportunity to testify. It is a true privilege to be here. My name is Jake Scott, and I'm an infectious diseases physician at Stanford. I've spent my career treating patients and evaluating medical evidence with a focus on vaccine safety and efficacy. I have no financial conflicts of interest. My vaccine research is either self-funded or supported by Stanford University. Since April, I've co-led an international team building what we believe is the most comprehensive database of vaccine trials ever assembled. We set out to answer a fundamental question: what does the complete trial record actually show about vaccine testing? We've cataloged 1,088 randomized control trials from 1941 to 2025, involving over 10.5 million participants. Every entry is publicly verifiable through PubMed links. The entire database is openly accessible. Anyone with internet access can verify our findings. This is what transparency looks like. Our findings directly refute false claims about vaccine testing. We documented 661 trials using inert placebo controls with saline, sterile water, or other biologically inactive substances. Of these, 503 involved antigens that routine childhood vaccines are based on. Most importantly, we confirmed that all 16 antigens routinely recommended for children have been studied in placebo-controlled trials. Every single one. The claim that childhood vaccines haven't been tested against placebos is demonstrably false.
Do you now just hearing it for the first time? Do you think anything is strange about the way he said those things?
No, but I'm not familiar with this fight specifically, so I can't.
Okay.
I can't.
Okay, so first of all, when you see the response to this, you'll wonder if Jake Scott is a deranged human being, if he's just insane, because he's coming so confidently and saying that we have all this data and it's publicly verifiable, and there's 661 studies that you would think that he was talking about the childhood schedule that are placebo controlled. But notice he didn't say that they were vaccines that are on the childhood schedule that were tested against these placebos. He said antigens that are commonly used in vaccines that are on the childhood schedule were tested against placebo. Okay?
I see. So
that's what he said. That's what he said. Now watch. Now when you see this, you wonder, like, what the hell is wrong? Is this guy, like, is he a zombie? Is he retarded? Because when you listen to the response, you'll think this guy must be retarded. But no, this is the power of inflation, because this guy works for Stanford University. How much inflation dollars has he received indirectly from Stanford that's funded by the federal government and all the other billionaire donors that it has, that are also probably inflation receptacles that all go to him in some drip, IV drip that he receives that he doesn't even realize. But his career is at stake because of the people that he has to answer to. So just watch this. This is Aaron Siri's response, and it's unbelievable.
Talk about the 661 studies that Dr. Scott is talking about in terms of these inert placebo controls. And just describe that in detail. I think it's interesting.
Sure. Actually, I think Dr. Scott has done a great service in terms of pointing out the lack of clinical trials supporting the safety of the routine injected childhood vaccines. You see, he's saying there are 661 inert controlled trials to support the safety of the routine injected childhood vaccines. But when you actually drill down into those 661 trials, let me give you the breakdown of them, okay? 567 of these trials were not a routine injected vaccine for a disease on the CDC's childhood schedule. They were for HIV vaccines or other vaccines. So totally irrelevant to the safety of routine injected childhood vaccines. The remaining 94 studies, 70 of them did not involve healthy children. For example, trials of HIV-positive adults. Again, completely irrelevant to the safety of childhood vaccines. Of the remaining 24, 21 did not involve a U.S. licensed vaccine it was not a vaccine used as a control to license a currently used U.S. licensed vaccine. For example, a Chinese flu shot, stuff like that. That leaves us with 3 studies, 3, that were claimed to have a inert control that were relied upon to license a routine injected childhood vaccine out of this entire list of 661. And these actually help really highlight the problem we have in terms of assessing safety with regards to the licensure of childhood vaccines. I want good clinical trial data. I need it for my practice. Okay, let me walk through those 3. One was a trial for the chickenpox vaccine, the varicella vaccine. Now that trial had, it was only a few hundred people, so it was underpowered anyway. But Dr. Scott says it's got an inert control, but actually it was an injection of neomycin, an antibiotic. That's not inert. No. And neomycin used topically can cause issues, let alone injected. The second one was Gardasil 4 trial, which had thousands and thousands of girls and women in the control group. Almost all of them got an aluminum adjuvant injection. And then there were a few hundred, only a few hundred, that were labeled as a inert control, but they weren't. They got everything that's in the vial except for the antigens in the alum, which included L-histidine, sorbate 80, sodium borate, yeast protein, not inert. And then the third one was a Gardasil 9 trial, which finally, by the way, did have a saline injection, just a few hundred. There were thousands and thousands of girls, women in that trial. They all got an injection of aluminum adjuvant, which I don't even know if it's ethical to inject somebody with something that's neuro and cytotoxic, but leaving that aside, the few hundred that got the placebo, but they only got it if they first got 3 doses of Gardasil 4. So again, not an actual inert control group. The result is there's 0 trials, 0, which were relied upon in this list of 6061 to license a routine injected vaccine on the CDC schedule that included a placebo.
Like this is all bullshit. It's transparent bullshit. And you wonder, like, what the hell is this guy thinking? And the answer is it's all just a bunch of puffy magic nothing, which is what the money is. But once you understand that this is what's happening, that children are being injected. We're back to the point for just for a second about that. He was saying that antigens that are included in childhood vaccines are tested against placebo. That might be true. Okay, fine. But the childhood vaccines that are actually approved contain a whole bunch of other metals as adjuvants to specifically aggravate the immune system so that it creates an immune response that are not involved in those other trials that he was talking about where there was an inert vaccine. In the childhood vaccine schedule, you have these whole bunch of chemical cocktails, whether they be mercury, not mercury anymore, I think it was stopped, but instead of mercury, they have aluminum now, which was never safety tested. So you have aluminum, yeast protein, and all this other stuff that's meant to aggravate your immune system without the antigen, tested against all that other crap plus the antigen. And then you have no placebo control where you see what happens when you don't inject kids with a bunch of aluminum. You don't know. That's the point. So when we're talking about Charlie Kirk and derangement and people believing these wacky things, and you look at somebody like Jake Scott who has all these titles and he's supposed to be very scientific and educated and knows what he's talking about, he's nothing. This guy is nothing, and it's so obvious, and it's all because of inflation.
He's just an empty suit pharma whore.
Yeah, but it's amazing how he fools himself.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, if there are people like right now. I have like people in my family, in my extended family, who they refuse to understand that gold is money. I mean, just absolutely refuse to. If they're clinging to their paper with religious devotion. So the ability of one to fool oneself is a wonder to behold sometimes.
Okay, just one more, and then we'll close it out.
Like I think he probably genuinely believes. I don't think he goes home at night and is like, yeah, I just lied to Congress. I think he actually believes what he was saying.
Yeah, but the ability to fool yourself to thinking that you believe something that is patently ridiculous is derangement.
Yeah.
That's what evil is. Okay, so we're gonna skip here to where it
You know
says,
why? The
yeah,
price the price the inflation is rewarding this. It's not punishing it because people respond to rewards and punishment. So if I tell you there's 5 lights and there's 4 lights,
right.
and if you refuse to do that, I shock you. And if you admit there's 5 lights, I give you some food, then yeah, eventually you're gonna see 5 lights.
Tell me how many lights you see. How many?
There are 4 lights!
You're gonna convince you.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it looks like 5 up there.
Yeah, I mean, I questioned my sanity during COVID. I was like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like the vaccine is the answer. Maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe like, why is everybody going so nuts? Maybe it's my fault. I had these flashes of these thoughts, but like, no, 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 no. I'm sane, and they're just trying to get to me. Like but it really does get to you. So let's skip. This is like this is like the fish in the barrel one, where his claims get even crazier.
Vaccines have saved 154 million lives globally over 50 years. The data are public. The evidence is overwhelming.
I think the claim about 154 million lives saved is it actually is the epitome of the corruption of science. It reflects the corruption of science in action. While this Henry Ford study, for example, is based on actual data, medical records, the immunization registry, and look carefully at it, this study is just based on guesswork and assumptions. It is a study published by the WHO. It is essentially an advertising piece by them for how effective their immunization program has been over the last 50 years. And they claim there's 154 million lives saved. But when you look at the study, unlike the Henry Ford study, it has no confidence intervals. So what is the confidence interval of that 154 million claim? What is the reliability range of it? It doesn't have one. You know why it doesn't have one? Because it's totally unreliable. As buried in page 42 of the supplement to that quote-unquote advertising piece by the WHO, it's set in a section entitled Uncertainty of Estimates, it says that, quote, it cannot put, quote, bounds around the veracity of the estimates. It can't put bounds around the veracity of the estimates. And that, quote, any bounds are arbitrary, end quote, and that, quote, it should not be interpreted as a claim to where the edges of valid estimates possibly lie, end quote. What that means is it could be equally true that 200 million lives were lost because of the vaccine program.
You see here, there's nothing here, and yet they still believe it. And the main problem, it's the same problem that we encounter when we talk about money. Like people still comment on my YouTube videos like, well, how are we supposed to use silver in the market when the dollar collapses? I'm like, you take it and you give it to someone and they give you something in exchange. Like money can be exchanged for goods and services. That's the Simpsons quote that I go back to all the time. Like, explain how money can be like.
Oh, $20. I wanted a peanut. $20 can buy many peanuts. Explain how. Money can be exchanged for goods and services. Woohoo!
Gold and silver are money. Try to get people to understand that, and most of them don't. But what else can you say? Like when somebody says 154 million lives are saved by vaccines, and you say, well, that's just the WHO, making up a number with no confidence intervals. You say, what are you talking about? Well, that's the truth. What do you want from me?
That's like when Lisa Simpson told Homer, like, I have this rock that repels tigers.
Yeah.
And he's like, I would like to buy your tiger repelling rock, right?
Yeah.
By your logic, I could claim that this rock keeps tigers away.
Oh, how does it work?
It doesn't work.
Uh-huh.
It's just a stupid rock.
Uh-huh.
But I don't see any tigers around here, do you?
Lisa, I want to buy your rock.
No, actually this reminded me of? This reminded me of like a Fed meeting, like when Powell was standing up and just spouting all the econo-babble. And he's like, well, we have abundant reserves and therefore the economy's fine and we're going to get us through all this. And he's saying nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing here. The last part of this video that I wanted to share with you is the inflation signature of it all.
So let me explain how all this works. This is right in my wheelhouse. This is what I study. I follow the money. Autism is a political economy problem. These are all political economy problems. So let me explain how this works. Thus far, government has failed in response to the autism epidemic because of regulatory capture. Rather than protecting public health, regulators have advanced the interests of the pharmaceutical industry. That's pretty straightforward. Science and medicine have failed in response to the autism epidemic because of epistemic capture. And what I mean by that is that the pharmaceutical industry has captured every step in the knowledge production process in science and medicine. Big Pharma controls what is studied, how it is researched, and what qualifies as evidence. Now, this capture permeates every level of the system. Medical textbooks and curricula are influenced by financially conflicted academics. Universities and department chairs hold substantial pharmaceutical ties. Most clinical trials are conducted by for-profit contract research organizations in China and the Third World. A large share of scientific journal articles are ghost-written. The pharmaceutical industry spends over $27 billion annually on drug promotion and continuing medical education. Standards of care are authored by conflicted physicians. So from the first day of medical school to the final years of practice, doctors live inside an epistemic bubble engineered by the pharmaceutical industry to increase its profits. Senator, if we repeal the 1980 Bayh-Dole Act, the 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, and the 2005 PrEP Act, that would remove the structural incentives that created the autism epidemic and the chronic disease epidemics in this country.
Okay, and then finally he goes into potential solutions like repealing this act, repealing that act, repealing whatever act, but that's not going to solve anything because as long as the inflation is still there, the monetary incentives to continue the corruption will take some other form.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. You can't. One of my revelations through all this is that there's you can't fight it while it's happening. You can only get it to end.
Yeah.
Like everything's just going to continue to get worse and worse until we're all just eating buckets of cheese whiz like an idiocracy and and waiting for the end.
Huh?
The Masturbation Network, keeping America baiting for 300 years.
Go away, baiting.
Yeah, well, the centralization of the medical industry. What can just very briefly when we close when the dollar collapses and the inflation is no longer possible, meaning they can print $1 trillion and it won't lead to any increase in purchasing power for them. How does this process get reversed? Very briefly, how does the process get reversed once the inflation is over?
Well,
let's say using the example of the medical
how does
industry.
sanity return to all this for in
Yeah.
like something like the medical industry?
Yeah.
Okay. The when the money printers are shut off, the credit is no longer generated. And so the firms are all the firms are too large. These firms are just giant and they literally can't make payroll because the payroll would be in gold and silver terms. Because the credit's fake, this is what people don't understand. Because the credit's fake, it's much, much larger than it should be on an honest system. On an honest system, people should demand payment in money more often. They should say, no, I don't necessarily want this credit. I want you to give me money. I don't necessarily trust this credit. And it's weird that a dishonest system is able to generate more trust than an honest system, but that's the function of a Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme is getting people to trust in a thing that has no value, right?
Okay, so then what happens to the pharmaceutical industry once they can't make payroll?
Yeah, they can't. So they literally cannot make payroll because they don't have the things to get it. even if they could get their hands on some bullion, they still just can't get it out, and so they have to downsize. They just simply the firm says we are too big. We have to break apart into 100 different firms. Now we have 100 different firms with 100 different CEOs and 100 different doctors and 100 different nurses. And they're
They're all
competing with each
competing,
other now.
right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
they're competing with each other. They're not unified under one giant inflationary system with an HR manager who insists on DEI hiring practices, right? Because if any one of them goes the DEI route, then everyone's gonna be like, you are insane. We're not gonna inject your stuff. All right.
Hmm.
We don't trust the medicine that's coming out of your clinic. But if there's only one gigantic firm that can, or three gigantic firms, and they've bought MSNBC and they've bought CNN and they've bought, all the things to say that, and
Right. And you
they
can't deny that because if you watch any of these channels, 50 to 60% of the commercials are all drug commercials, which means that they're controlling what
yeah,
the news channel is
exactly.
saying.
So there's no check. There's no one in the system to put a check on them. Not the media, not each other. Not the government because they bought them too, right? So there's
Mm.
there's no check. So now they can have DEI Karen come in and insist everyone, recognize pronouns, rather than focus on actually productive medicine. So
Mhm.
yeah, the breakup leads to, instead of Pfizer, Moderna, and what's the other one? J&J.
Wow. J&J, Merck, whatever.
Whatever. Yeah, whatever. Instead of these like three, four, five big companies, there's going to be 1,000 companies, 1,000 pharmaceutical companies, all competing with each other. And if you want to get your children vaccinated, and the vaccines will probably, if on the other side it's determined, through the market that vaccines are actually useful, then you can get your children vaccinated. It may turn out that vaccines are just a net negative and no one's going to want to do it anymore, and that other things like sanitation and education are more important for children growing up without communicable diseases. Then it may turn out that that's the case rather than vaccines. If it turns out that vaccines are worth it, then parents will probably decide. And it may be, we may see localities that require school vaccinations, and we may see localities that don't, and parents and people can just move to live with like-minded people who want to do one or the other.
Right. So I'm just going to put what you said very succinctly. So, in order to control an entire industry, you need to be able to roll it up into just a few very big companies that the politicians are attached to, and then the politicians can control those huge amount of medical pharmaceutical capital very efficiently because there's only a few of them. If when the inflation stops and then all of these big pharma gargantuan pieces of capital break up into 1,000 pieces, it's going to be almost impossible to control any single thing that comes out of them. And then you're going to have the market really competing and deciding which medicines are good, which medicines are bad, instead of everything going through one agency that it goes through a revolving door and brings the money back into it like some kind of diarrhea vomiting machine, whatever it is. And
The human centipede.
yeah, it becomes impossible to control once the industry has to break up into thousands of little different capital pieces. And then parents have to research which uh, which companies have the most honest trials, and then you have these smaller groups of people like evaluating the trials in different magazines or different blogs or whatever it is, telling this trial is bullshit. This trial was based on a complete placebo control. This trial was not. Trust this one. Don't trust that one. And parents can make, instead of the FDA making a decision because they are funded by the inflation of the government, you have parents tuning into different organizations that have different opinions, and they make their own decision.
Yeah, and the people mistake that like credit is somehow like, oh, like how are we going to live without a world with credit? Don't worry, we're going to live in a world with money and credit. And it'll work way better. I promise people it will work way better on the other side. We have way too much credit now, and that's what's causing these firms to grow to ginormous sizes. We can have way better everything with much smaller firms. We do not need firms these sizes. The economies of scale are fake. These are fake economies of scale. These are not real economies of scale. So, look forward to the brighter day on the other side, because everything's going to be better, including pharmaceuticals.
We're going to get there. And just as the greatest generation, the World War II generation, was able to survive it, and they were the boomers, they were able to produce more children than we ever did. And they made it. we will make it through this violence. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be traumatizing, but we'll come out on the other side. We'll be okay as long as we keep our heads.
Absolutely.